Good Friday morning, everyone. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live in a very empty Mackey Arena, a little while after Purdue's eventful 84-76 win over Minnesota here in Mackey Arena. This is your goldenblack.com wrap video. It's brought to you by our friends at the Purdue Union Club Hotel. Thank you so much to them for their support, as always. I am going to try to make this quick. I need to go to bed. I have to be somewhere tomorrow morning. And mornings and I don't always see eye to eye, especially after late games like this. So just when I was sitting here thinking, hey, I have nothing left to say about Purdue. Purdue is getting really boring. My job is becoming less and less compelling with every machine-like win they register. Purdue is down 8 at the half at home to Minnesota. They fall down double digits early in the second half. Countless times this season there have been close games at various points in said games, and never for a moment has the thought crossed my mind that Purdue might lose this game. But this was probably the closest it came, because it seemed like Minnesota couldn't miss a shot. A lot of the boxes were being checked for the blueprint to beat Purdue. The blueprint includes some of the following, but is not limited to exclusively to the following. Not just turnovers, but points off turnovers. Minnesota had a bunch of them. Second chance points. Minnesota had a bunch of them. Unreasonably hot shooting by the opponent. Minnesota obviously did that. They were a 34% shooting team coming in, and in the first half, they were 9 of 16. That's a lot of threes for a half, on the road, no less. Free throws, to a certain extent, that hasn't really gotten Purdue beat. It's made things a little more interesting than Purdue would prefer. The things that have gotten Purdue beat twice this season are those points off turnovers, and by extension, turnovers, period, and the hot opponent shooting. I guess at Northwestern, the free throws didn't help, now that I think about it. So a lot went sideways for Purdue here. A lot went right from Minnesota. And I do think Minnesota deserves a hell of a lot of credit for what they were able to do here tonight. That's my final point, so I won't preempt that. I know you're looking forward to that portion of the video. But Purdue figured it out at the right time. I don't want to say they dominated the second half. They dominated the start of the second half. To Minnesota's credit, Minnesota did not go away when it was kind of one of those tipping point moments where the visiting team seems like it might be on the verge of getting blown out here. Didn't happen. Again, credit to Minnesota. We'll talk more about that later. Not that we need to now. I've said everything I have to say. But I think Purdue won this game for a variety of reasons. On top of the fact that they are really good. They're better than Minnesota. One of which was, I think that, Braden Smith and Mason Gillis have real competitor instincts, a real competitive knack, especially Braden Smith. I've seen him do this 1,000 times. Well, I haven't seen him play 1,000 times, but you know what I mean, a lot. I've seen him do this a lot, whether at high school, AAU, at Purdue. The moment comes when his team needs him or needs someone to do something to change a game, and Braden Smith delivers. Changes a game, makes a play or a series of plays, and suddenly the game has changed. Braden Smith really delivered. Mason Gillis was a big part of this as well. He made a huge three. He made a huge bucket in transition off a turnover forced by Braden Smith. Big-time response by Gillis, who was being hunted on defense. Probably challenged his pride a little bit, came down, made some big plays on offense. But also the bench. The bench was fantastic in this game. I thought Caleb First, this was his best game of the year. And I can't really even think of a second. I'm sure there's something in there. But I don't know how he's -1. That's simply a virtue of the fact that Ross-Ade wasn't on the floor. But I thought he played really well. Gave Purdue a little bit of an offensive spark that you don't necessarily expect from Caleb First when he comes in for Edey. I thought he defended pretty well. He rebounded pretty well. just did a great job in a situation where the best player in the country is on the bench, and Purdue is not necessarily accustomed to that being the case because Zach-Edey so rarely gets into foul trouble. But he did tonight. Caleb first. I don't want to say they didn't miss Edey, but I think he did as good a job as could have been expected filling the gap when Zach-Edey was out of the game. And then Ethan Morton, I think, is a guy who, you might not even have noticed playing. And that's a good thing in the sense that, he's not out there ever doing anything to hurt his team. I thought he was great defensively. Purdue could not guard Cam Christie. No one could guard Cam Christie. They tried Fletcher Lawyer to start the game. They tried Camden Heide after that. I'm sure somebody else got a run here and there that I might have missed. It wasn't until Morton got on him, especially in the second half, that Cam Christie really had a hard time getting his shots. And this is a guy who I saw him play as a junior in high school, and he was raw, he was skinny, and this is what the chronological passage of time does for talented kids. He was making NBA plays. He was making plays reminiscent of his brother. He's not as tall and long as Max was, but he's got that same ability to kind of create shots for himself, make those pull-ups, really, really extend over defenders, and just make shots. And nobody could stop him from getting to his spots. Nobody could stop him from getting his shots off in the first half. Ethan Morton shut his water off, as the kids say, in the second half. And I thought that was really critical in this game. I think that, what I say a lot in this game? I finish a lot of sentences with the phrase, in this game. I've got to stop. Minnesota just was bound to cool off, too, from three. I think that was part of it, but I think Purdue defended better. I think Ethan Morton was a central figure in all of that, and he deserves a ton of credit for what Purdue was able to get done here. In a game, again, they trailed by double digits in the second half. Purdue has not been in this situation much this season, if at all. I can't remember how many they were down against Alabama. I can't remember how many they were down against Gonzaga, but I don't think they were ever down double digits in the second half. Nebraska would be the one. That was an outlier game. But kudos to Purdue for really getting it together, doing everything they needed to do, namely getting Zach-Edey back on the floor. I think that, that threw Purdue's rhythm off a little bit. I think they were in a pretty good place to start this game. Getting out to a quick 11-point lead. Things changed as well as Caleb first played. I think they kind of got thrown off the rhythm a little bit, and to Minnesota's credit, they took full advantage. But after that, Purdue pretty much did everything they needed to do in the second half to not just win this game, but win it going away. I mean, Purdue got this up to 10 points. They were down 8 at the half. They were down 10 early in the half. That's a 20-point swing from the start of the second half to the end of the second half. So I think Purdue showed a real maturity, a real experience, a real winning instinct, something I've talked about a few times before. And I think it comes from those upperclassmen. It comes from Braden Smith because he's that level of competitor. He's a special competitor. I think Zach-Edey's got this in him. I think Mason Gillis has this in him. I think Ethan Morton's got this in him. I think Lance Jones is a guy who rises to the moment too. Lance Jones maybe didn't necessarily jump off the page like he has in other games this season, but then you look at the stats, you look at the itemization of some of the plays he made in the second half, some of the timely plays he made in big moments, the transition bucket for one, the three-pointer he made for another, and he's plus 26. I don't really generally put a lot of stock in the plus-minus unless it's a one or the other situation. But when one guy is plus 26 and no one else is better than plus 8, that really, really says, plus 9. Zach-Edey was plus 9. That really says something about a guy's impact. You look at, too, Braden Smith, 16 points, 9 assists, 8 rebounds, 4 steals. Again, like I say with Zach-Edey, don't take this stuff for granted. This is abnormal stuff this kid is doing. He takes 7 shots. He makes both his threes. He makes all his free throws on a night when Purdue was, again, uneven at the foul line. But he rebounds. He's disruptive defensively. He's just doing everything for this team. He only needs 7 shots to have this type of game. just a really, really special season he's having. A really special player Purdue has, with still the bulk of his career left to be played. So, nice win for Purdue. I know people would have preferred this to have been a little more one-sided than it was, but as I said before, I think you need to give Minnesota more credit than you need to knock Purdue. I don't know what's going on for Purdue at the foul line. They are a better foul shooting team, I think, than they're shooting in some of these games. But at the same time, at some point in a season, you are what your percentage says you are. And yes, Trey Kaufman-Renn is not Purdue's best foul shooter. He's one of the guys who has, been struggling there. The one-on-one's not been kind to Purdue, which is not good, because this is a team built to get to the one-on-one very quickly. Zach Eady's been a little bit up and down. He's proven himself as a good foul shooter. Just needs to get back to shooting more consistently. I think Trey Kaufman-Renn can't do any more to improve at the foul line than he already does. I see him after practice all the time, shooting 1,000 shots. I don't see anything terribly wrong with his form. Not that I would be one to diagnose it from 150 yards away upstairs, but the foul line has not been kind to Purdue, and that's something that's going to catch up with them eventually if it continues. It's not like you just flip a switch and start making your free throws all of a sudden. Like Fletcher Lawyer, the best foul shooters Purdue has, one of the best they've had in a long time, is one of three. I mean, that's not high volume, but these are situations where you go 19 to 32 when you could easily be 25 to 32 or something like that, and this is an entirely different game. But nobody's trying to miss free throws. I mean, that's the point. Berating people for missing free throws is insanity, but it's kind of the nature of processing basketball, I guess. It looks so easy. It's not that easy. But I think Purdue has shown itself to be a better foul shooting team than its results lately have indicated or reflected. It's just, at some point, you just have to figure it's going to start falling or it's going to cost them, one or the other. But that's pretty much what I got from this 84-76 Purdue win over Minnesota. Again, my whole spiel the last couple days has been, this team is boring. There's never anything interesting about this. Purdue just comes out here and sometimes they play with their food like they did against Indiana. They're better than all of these teams that are coming in here. They've been pretty consistent in their performances. Zach Eady's always good. Braden Smith's always good. The three-point shooting is always good. It's boring. There's not a lot to talk. It's not boring for you to watch because you're partisans and you want Purdue to win these games by 1,000 points. Many of you have ulterior interests in these games as well. But for me, when I have to come up with compelling things to talk about after the same game over and over and over again, it's hard. Poor boohoo sports writer, right? Anyway, thank you to Minnesota for making this game compelling, at least to give me something to talk about, some interesting fodder to have written down on my notes that I can't even read. They're really moving in the right direction. Ben Johnson's doing a hell of a job there. They're really good with their X's and O's. They were really smart in what they were doing today. They really, really looked for favorable matchups, driving the ball on Purdue's bigger guys, really trying to isolate Dawson Garcia to put him in positions to, do some good things against Purdue's size. I think they did some really disruptive things defensively that I'm not really sure what they did that was innovative, but it gave Purdue problems for sure with their post traps and things like that. I'll go back and watch tomorrow. If anything new jumps out at me, I'll be sure to let you know. But for that team to have come in here and given this really, really outstanding Purdue team on its home floor this kind of game, to have this sort of confidence and this sort of toughness really speaks volumes about what they got going on there right now. And, Ben Johnson is going to be on my Coach of the Year ballot when I submit it to the Big Ten. Right now, I would vote for Painter, number one. Ben Johnson, probably number two. He's doing an unbelievable job here. This team's not going to make the NCAA tournament. But they really, really put on a show here today. They really acquitted themselves very well. Cam Christie's going to be a star. They got the right pieces out of the portal. Elijah Hawkins is a good player. didn't have his best game tonight, but he's done a really good job there. And you have to give them a ton of credit. When Purdue went up double digits there to start the second half, this team, I thought Purdue was going to win by 25. It just seemed like that's the way a game like this should go, especially considering Minnesota's coming off a game where they let slip a 20-point lead at Iowa because Dawson Garcia got hurt, probably more than anything. But for those guys to have come in here and stuck with this when, they were on the verge of getting their doors blown off, I think you have to give them a lot of credit. And I think you have to give Purdue a lot of credit, too, for not, losing their minds, because this is not a situation they have been through very much this season. Obviously, there's more to these guys' careers than just this season, but it had to be a foreign feeling to go in the locker room down 8 after you were up 11 and just not be shell-shocked, or whatever term you want to use. So that's what I got. I'm just rambling at this point. I said this was going to be quick. 16 minutes later, here I am still talking. Thank you to the Purdue Club Hotel for your support, as always. We appreciate it profoundly. And thank you to you, the viewer, the processor. Thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. I can't remember what the other verb is. And thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials. And I will talk to you guys again this weekend after Purdue plays Ohio State in a very odd situation they're in. So thank you, everybody.